Welcome to Complicated Opportunities, a CosmereRPG podcast with a few GMs. This week, we are going to be joined by the new lead designer for the CosmereRPG, Lydia Suen. Lydia, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to let you introduce yourself, and then we'll just get rolling with our conversation today.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I've been with the CosmereRPG since its early days. I started off as a writer, moved on to be the lead writer, and then now I'm leading design. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, so usually like one of the things we like to do when we bring on a guest for the first time is like kind of walk through your history of playing TTRPGs and as far as like the work that got you to the CosmereRPG. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Awesome. All right. Well, I started off wanting to be a writer pretty early on, wanting to be an author. And so I studied creative writing at Stanford University, and that taught me a lot about story science, just pacing, character development, emotional resonance, plot structure. And then I took that knowledge after I graduated and went on to become a developmental editor. So I did that for a few years and really enjoyed it. And then ultimately, I was approached by Edge Studio, one of our clients at the editing house, and they asked if there was an editor who would be interested in writing for an RPG. And I think my boss like immediately was like, "Oh, that's Lydia." I was playing a lot of RPGs at the time, trying to rope other editors into playing with me, and just been a lifelong gamer. So it was a really great opportunity that I feel like kind of fell into my lap, like probably a combination of opportunity meets preparation. And yeah, it was just a fantastic experience. I worked on Adventures in Rokugan and was the narrative lead for that.
Awesome. Yeah, so I actually recently purchased the L5R book and was flipping through some of the adventures. So like what brought you to that book? And then what like I guess what did you learn from working there that then brought you to the CosmereRPG?
Yeah, what brought me to that book was that I was someone who'd been playing RPGs and really, was really into it. And I played D&D at the time as my kind of home group game. And I also am a Chinese game designer, and so I bring kind of like an East Asian background. L5R had a lot of Japanese inspirations, but also had some Chinese inspirations in it that originally weren't really codified as such. And so I kind of came on to kind of build some of that out and then also adapt L5R for D&D for that system. And so the Adventures in Rokugan book, it's a core rule book, and that's what it does. It takes the setting of L5R Rokugan and brings it to a D&D gameplay experience.
Yeah. So when doing that, like I don't know if the exact term is like culture consultant, but like sensitivity consultant maybe.
Yeah, there's a few terms people like to use. So sensitivity editor, sensitivity reader, or like cultural consultant. So that's kind of what I'd say for that. And I was professionally doing sensitivity reading for Chinese American characters leading up to my work on this. So I'd had some experience in that, certainly had an eye for what to look out for with racism against East Asian people. And there was some of that baked into the setting that I don't think anybody really felt good about. And Edge Studio has just been so fantastic all the way through with hiring sensitivity editors and authentic voices for different projects. So it was really cool working with a company that really wanted to work with me. I think a lot of times there's this perception that sensitivity professionals work on trying to like sanitize things or are there so that you don't get canceled or whatever. And if you're looking at it from that approach, I really think it's like the wrong approach to take. I think a better way to look at it would be making sure that you don't do harm, but also looking for all of the cool things that you get when you have authentic voices on a project. So Edge was fantastic, really, really open to changes and to listening to the reasoning behind them. I think like some companies just want to hurry and fix something up and ship it out, but I had such a good experience working with Edge. And on that project, I was the narrative lead, and the overall lead for Adventures in Rokugan and design lead was Max Brook, who then went on to go work on the Cosmere RPG. So we were able to work closely first on this project and then got to work on Cosmere together.
And was that sort of your path to the Cosmere RPG was with Max?
I think it was half of it. So I had two contacts on the original team that had been compiled. I had Max, who was my mentor in the industry and who I just gotten done working with. And then I also had Dan Wells, who I knew through a writing conference. I met him when we were both faculty at this conference, and I came up to him in a book signing and just kind of, talked to him a little bit about L5R because he had played that game before, and I'd seen a YouTube video of his. And so we met there. And then Dan is such a friendly, awesome person. And so I played a couple RPGs with him. And then he reached out about the Cosmere RPG, which was super cool. And at first, I'm not going to lie, the email came from a suspicious sounding email address. And it even had like the phishing, like kind of the phishing warning at the top. And so I was like, ooh, is this real? And so I had reached out to Dan through another email address that we'd previously corresponded with. And he's like, oh, that's me. And I was like, okay. But it was kind of funny because at first I was not sure if it was legit or not. But yeah, it was really fun. And then since then, Dan and I have become really good friends, which is awesome.
That's awesome. So were you a fan of Brandon's work before you joined, or had you read it much, if at all?
Yeah, I was a fan of Brandon's, and I had read not all of the Cosmere, but a good amount of it. Specifically, Stormlight had really been meaningful to me.
Yeah.
I think, the beginning of Way of Kings kind of takes a second to get into, but as soon as it starts picking up, I was sold. And I really liked The Emperor's Soul. That's a book my brother had recommended to me a long time ago. And it kind of took me a while to get to it in my reading pile up. But yeah, I really liked how much Brandon focused on character development. And I like the Sandor Lanch is just a masterclass in writing novels. And so there was a lot to appreciate there. And Stormlight was just such a great first entry into the project. I think if it had been another setting, I don't know, I would have gone in with different opinions. But because there was such a character focus in Stormlight and with the Radiant Orders, like I was super sold on that. And then later on, really love Mistborn, really love everything else. But Stormlight, I think, will always have my heart. And so that one was definitely impossible to say no to.
That's awesome. What's your favorite Stormlight book?
Words of Radiance.
Okay, that's a popular one. Who's your favorite character?
Oh, don't see, now we're gonna have to start this whole thing because I'm gonna say Moash and it's gonna cause problems.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You weren't at
I
Nexus
don't know
2024.
this. What?
Yeah.
Oh, Dan and I are the Moash trolls. In our friend group, we kind of started this. If you've ever seen the I Heart Moash stickers and stuff, we are the trolls behind that.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess this is how I get canceled in the
I'm
Cosmere
sorry.
community. No, it's okay. I actually I leaned into it and I submitted this panel idea for Nexus in 2024. And the panel was called Moash is a Real One. And we actually managed to fill a room of 500 people, which is pretty impressive. And we came in doing the whole gag of like, yes, we know Moash, this is going to be controversial. And I was moderating the panel and had arranged this whole bit where my boss, Johnny, came in, and Ruvaid, who worked on Mistborn, was also on this panel. So our boss comes in, interrupts me when I'm moderating the beginning of the panel, and just says, like, basically, opinions are their own. Also, you're both fired to me and Ruvaid. And it was like this hilarious bit. But I won't go through the full Moash apologist, the full essay that I basically have written. But
well, I want that
all of this to say, I think that our heroes are who we get to see in the books be heroes, right? And I think a lot of people have redemption. They accept the redemption of Dalinar, but then they're not willing to see a potential redemption of Moash. And I don't know how that's all going to play out. But what I will say is I think if you had met the Blackthorn like on the page initially, you'd first met Dalinar and followed him through books as who he was, as the Blackthorn, as a warmonger, as a, with the whole Rothla stuff, like, and being a negligent father, absent partner, like all of these things, I think we would see him differently. And if we had books of seeing him like that, I think that it would have felt like redemption was impossible for him. And so all I'm saying with Moash is that there are more things to like about him than there would have been to like about Dalinar in the past. Like he grew up in a society where violence is treated as the answer. That was what was told to him. He grew up under intense marginalization and wanted to protect the people he loved and cared about and fight an oppressive system. Did he do that in the way that was, in quotes, right? Hard to say. Like in the Alethi way, I would argue yes. I would argue that in the society he was brought up in, where heaven is like literally the Tranquiline Halls where you go and fight, I would argue yes. But that's me, and that's a whole different conversation that could fill an entire hour.
Well, you know what? I want to have this conversation.
So on your return episode, we will do where we build Moash on Demiplane, and then you can give us your essay, because I still have my Moash sticker from that panel somewhere.
Awesome! You were there?
In my set of stickers. Yes, I was at that panel.
You're a real one.
That's actually one of like the 3 panels I went to that.
Oh, that's rad. I appreciate it.
Was this before or after you found out about the Crystal Inquisitor bit? Sorry, I have to ask this.
Oh, that's not important.
Okay. All right.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well,
no comment.
Wow, crazy.
It's okay. I got dunked at Nexus last year for it. I got, dunked in the dunk tank.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have atoned.
The penance has been paid.
Yes.
Now, to circle back a little bit, Brandon's writing and a lot of his worlds are pretty heavily influenced by East Asian culture. Do you think that did you enjoy bringing that expertise of yours to the RPG?
I did, and I think what I really enjoyed bringing was a perspective that all cultures have value and that they're often misunderstood. And so that's kind of what I brought with my professional sensitivity background that I had was looking at the different cultures of Roshar and helping to build them out and determine who are these people and how do they see themselves? What does their culture, what are their beliefs? What do they actually stand for? Why are things the way that they are within this culture? And in the books, from different characters' POVs, you see them react to foreigners with different degrees of like using stereotypes and whatnot. And it's interesting because you see a lot of people, a lot of cultures through the perspective of outsiders. And so it's interesting then to give the opportunity to take a look at these cultures from insiders, and then you can build characters for many cultures we see on Roshar.
Yeah. What was your favorite culture that you developed for Roshar? Or like got to have them like a pretty unique say? Because like obviously the Alethi are very built out.
Yeah, I think my favorites were definitely Azish Empire member states. There was a lot that we got to world build for there, and a lot of that world building I got to do was fairly collaborative with Brandon, which was a really cool experience. And I think there were a lot of pinch me moments for my career, sitting in the room with him, just asking him where a sea silk comes from, or how the '80s war is affecting Emol, things like that.
Now, was he able to just answer those things off the dome, or like did he have to like go reference notes? Just as like, are you allowed to say that?
Yeah, I think I can say. And honestly, Brandon is brilliant. He's always got this rich tapestry of connecting points in his mind. And during those narrative meetings, I think it's okay for me to say that he was signing books the entire time. But he would look up, he would make eye contact. He was very engaged in this conversation. The man just is very good at multitasking, which is truly impressive. But a lot of it, like a lot of times he would have ideas for things that he had already had in mind, or he'd have logical kind of entry points to things, and then we'd riff a little bit back and forth. And it was also really cool because there were times where he looked to me for my expertise in world building and, just kind of like how cultures are built. And it was pretty neat to have that experience. I think I went into those narrative meetings in the beginning being a little bit, kind of nervous. And those were moments where suddenly it was just cool because it was like creative people just riffing. And a lot of that made it into the book, which was really neat. In fact, my writing sample to get on this project, I'd written about Marat and the villas where, the creme falls and it coats these antique structures. And then you have these handicraft workers go up on ladders and kind of draw back in all of the different creme designs, and kind of like push the creme clay around and preserve these ancestral designs. And that and Yada. I'd written a little bit about Yada to give a writing sample of something where I didn't world build at all and I could just show respect for existing canon. And so those two things actually made it into the book, which is really cool. But yeah, just getting to logically figure out how to connect the dots of cultural touch points Brandon had already introduced, and then work with him to determine, what types of connective tissue were appropriate for a culture. All of that was really, really fun, fascinating work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there, and if this is something you can't answer, that's okay. Is there a any specific thing that you're like, that's a Lydia Suen original that you can point to in the book?
Ooh, a lot of the world building, really. I did all the nation and culture sections, except for Alethkar and Thalena, which were already done when I came on the project. But I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily a favorite, but it's a fun one. The Unkalaki expedition sheds. So just when I talk about cultural touch points, like,
Yeah.
there's lines like Horneater's boots smelling bad. It's kind of fun to just think about, like, why would people think that they smell bad? Sometimes people have biases and there's racism and different issues where there really isn't a legitimate reason why, there's a stereotype. And I think that's most of the time. But other times it comes from a lack of understanding, about a culture and different things. So I was kind of thinking about, is there something fun we can do with that? Or is that just straight up, marginalization that doesn't really have any sort of root. And for these expedition sheds, the Horners, their climates are so interesting because on their islands, it's very like tropical and humid. And then they go outside and it's a tundra. It's just a wasteland. And so you're not going to be wearing fur boots and your whole, expedition getup around these kind of balmy, islandy areas. But when you do go out in the expedition sheds, then you have to gear up. And so the idea is that there's these expedition sheds on the outer parts of the islands. And when you, prepare to go out into the tundra, there's pieces of communal gear that you can use there. And they're crafted in such a way that they're very adaptable. And so that's kind of where Horneater Boots landed. Is if you've ever been to a bowling alley and it smells the way it smells, the expedition sheds are the bowling alleys of the Horneater Peaks.
Okay. And so where in the book is that?
Oh, the Horneater Boots part?
Yeah.
Oh, I could look that up for you if you're interested, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's an insult that Lopin uses or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah. Each village has a communal expedition supply shed located near its outer border. Okay.
Oh, I thought you
That's
meant in the novels.
no. The
Okay.
various, like, if there's an insult against a people, it's coming from a bridgeman.
Pretty much.
Like,
Yeah, in the World Guides, it's in the Horneater Peak section of
yeah.
the Nations and Cultures chapter.
Yeah. I must have glossed over it when I read it, because I did devour, like, the second I got the World Guide, I devoured it in like a day.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I swear every time I look through the World Guide, there's like a fun little thing that pops out that I missed the first time. So
Yeah,
it's definitely worth multiple read throughs for sure.
It's fun.
absolutely.
Some of the things that we put in there are overt, and some of them are like more subtle. So there are times where you might just connect the dots yourself on something that was mentioned in the novels and something in the world guide.
Yeah. No, that's very fun. I like that a lot.
So as far as the writing aspect, like, is there anything like I know that a lot of people have mentioned Brotherwise has like a very collaborative writing process when you guys are writing the world guides. So like, what are some things you think our listeners, viewers, whatever, like wouldn't know about putting a book like this together? Like what's just like a fun I guess explanation of like how that process works, and then the difference between like being a writer on the chapters and then the lead writer, like what differentiates that?
Yeah, behind the scenes, I think when you build out a book plan, you build out a plan. Plans sometimes change. And sometimes when you're doing something, you learn like, oh, I need to adapt a bit. The points of interest were originally slated to be like 375 words a piece. And I remember there were two writers on them initially, and I was one of them. And I had written them out, but I just kind of raised an issue where I'm like, I think this is way too few words to actually have anything meaningful here, for GMs to use. And so I'd advocated for us to kind of blow up the word count of those and then be able to just do fewer, but have them be more robust. So a GM could just, open the book and really dive in, and you could have multiple sessions or even an entire campaign in one of these points of interest. And so that's something that we learned as we went. And then early on, we had leaders on the team, but we didn't really have leaders of books. That's something that Lila Fujiwara kind of like, she championed that and started that when we first, or when she first came on the team. But before that, we were a bunch of writers writing together and trying to follow this book plan, but we didn't have a central person really focused on content and making sure that there weren't redundancies and different things like that. And so it was toward the end of initial development that Johnny promoted me and basically said, hey, could you work with our lead editor, Laura, and make sure that this book is really cohesive, that we're not wasting word count on redundancies, and that it has kind of this central narrative you can follow from beginning to end.
Yeah, like that's just a very like fascinating process to me about what like how that works, and when you have so many people contributing to like a cohesive book, because like what's really impressive about your all's process is like, to me, the world guide reads like one person, like,
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it was quite a few
so
of us.
yeah, so like that's just kind of that's extremely impressive, because it's not like something like that. I've read a few different books where there were a lot of people contributing, and they can feel very because you've got different styles and whatnot. So like it's really cool that you guys still have the stuff you can point to that's your own, but at the same time, like it feels like a cohesive book as well. So like kudos to you guys. Pretty sweet, not gonna lie.
That's awesome.
Um,
Thank you.
so what, I guess, pushed because it seems like being a writer and being a designer can be very divergent paths in an
Mhm.
RPG. So like what made you want to take the switch from being a writer to being a designer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I was invited onto the core design team after I'd only been on this project for a few months. A couple spots opened up, and that's actually when Ross also joined. So it was cool because we got to join together. Um, and I came in as an advocate for story. So somebody who was working a lot on building out character background information and backstory, your cultural expertises, things like that. I also came on to design the Endeavor types and mass warfare, things like that. I typically have more of a GM facing background with game design, and it was pretty cool to lean into that at times, but also get more involved in the player facing side with character creation and development. So I kind of came on as a voice of a more narrative designer representing building really good story elements into the system and into the Cosmere RPG. Things that would make it feel like you were reading a Brandon Sanderson book when you play the Cosmere RPG at a table with your characters.
That's awesome. Yeah, that I would say you guys nailed that. Because it definitely, even just the way the ideals are spoken and how you work towards those, like it definitely feels like you're playing one of Brandon as you're playing. So I guess the next logical question there is, as you're moving to lead designer, like so like what things are you excited about to in the future of the Cosmere RPG? Like you've got Mistborn coming up. I'm assuming projects we can't talk about. So like what kind of things, like now that you've got your hands on the kind of the lead design role, like what kind of stuff can we expect from Brotherwise coming up soon?
Yeah, I can't reveal our next campaign settings yet, but we are done with Mistborn. Our hardcovers are shipped off to the printer, which is super exciting. What I will say is no matter what we do next, you can expect that I will have a keen eye for system continuity, making sure that the mechanics work across all campaign settings. Ever since the beginning of this project, it was really important to us that you could play an Elantrian with a Radiant and a Metalborn character, and you can kind of do this mismatch with Cosmere characters in a campaign someday. And so I will just say, you're not going to have to relearn the rules of how to play the Cosmere RPG whenever we introduce a new campaign setting. It'll just be cool new character options and new exciting places to explore. So we're going to make sure we keep an eye on that. In terms of complexity, if you liked what you saw in Stormlight, that's what you can expect going forward. We did have to go a little bit more complex for Mistborn just because, of the IP. It's hard magic and the metallic arts are sometimes a bit crunchier. We really spent a ton of time redesigning them. I think we ended up in a really good place. Basically, we went as, narrative as we could, but they are a little bit more prescriptive out of necessity. So Mistborn is a little bit crunchier of a campaign setting than Stormlight was, but going forward, we are not looking to, keep getting more complex. We're looking more to go back to baseline of Stormlight. So I currently, with what I know of the Cosmere, with the books that are currently published, we are not planning to go back to the complexity level of Mistborn, but stay more in the Stormlight kind of realm. And then the last thing is probably that we will continue to really focus on rich storytelling, focus on really fun character options. There'll always be neat things around the corner.
Nice.
Uh,
So our fans are loving to hear all the stuff coming out. Is there anything super like not spoilery? Because I don't want to risk anyone's stuff there. But like, what are some of the things that you can tell us coming up about? Like, excited about? Like, fans are obviously excited about Era 2 and getting to play with guns. So, so what are some of the exciting like high level that you're wanting fans to really sink their teeth into when Mistborn comes out?
Yeah, high level things. Heroic Paths, plug for Heroic Paths. Max and I designed these out. I designed the Rebel, Grifter, Haze Killer, Mastermind, and Inventor. All of these fit into existing Heroic Paths. They're just new specialties. Really encourage folks to kind of dive in and try those out. For Metalborn Paths, there's lots of fun ones. Would highly recommend Twinborn because I feel like that's a good level of complexity. It kind of mimics the two surges you get as a radiant with having two powers. There's lots of really fun combinations you can make. Ross, our invested arts expert, did such a good job on the invested arts. And yeah, they're really fun. And guns, we're introducing guns to the Cosmere through Mistborn. And there's some fun gun crafting you can do. I did a lot of the design for that, and it was really neat. We met with a firearm consultant. So we had Max who did the gun rules, and then I was doing, firearm prototype crafting. And so we met with our firearm consultant, Abby, who is fantastic. She's a Marks woman who is a really big fan of Mistborn and like all of the Cosmere. And so it was really neat to talk to her because a lot of times experts will focus on what is not possible when you consult with them. They're like, no, this would never work. You would, never make part of a gun out of this metal. It's too soft, it's too brittle, whatever, right? And it was really fun meeting with her because she's like, okay, if you did use gold on a gun, like this is where you would use it, or aluminum like works like, this. And if you use haze killer rounds, you would want a gun to be built like this to be able to, not have issues with that. And yeah, it's just interesting talking about complications because she plays the RPG too. And so it's cool talking about different complications that could happen if your gun was built in a non-standard way. So all of that was really fun. With guns, we kind of had to focus on, they're very dangerous, but we need to lower the damage dice a little bit. And then we introduced deflect for guns as a way of having them still be dangerous, but not having the raw damage output rival like a shard blade, for example.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did that process really work? Because like obviously we have deflect in Stormlight. Armor gives deflect, and you reduce the damage on a sword or an axe hit just as much. What was the like design process for deflect like? Because it's very similar to things that have existed in other RPGs, but
Yeah, we had Andrew Fisher and Max Brook, who came from Star Wars, and there's a mechanic called Soak that is similar to this. We weren't going to do deflect initially, but we were a good ways into Mistborn design by the time we were wrapping things up with Stormlight. We just had to be working ahead in order to meet our print deadline to fulfill the Kickstarter on time. So before we ever announced that this would be the Cosmere RPG, we were actually working on Mistborn for like a good year. And we introduced Deflect because, again, we were trying to like figure out how to make guns feel really dangerous to the average person, but then still have them feel kind of like a weird reverse of bringing a knife to a gunfight when you have shard blades in the room. So we were trying to kind of like figure out how that would all work. And with guns, they're very dangerous. They're a lot more accessible. And shard blades are obviously more rare. And so there's kind of some balancing elements there. But it was a way for us to have guns deal less, damage, but still be really dangerous. And that was kind of like the main focus. Because when we tried to have guns deal more damage initially, it just made shard weapons irrelevant, and that didn't feel good.
yeah. Yeah, that's got to be a very careful like line to walk. I had a couple of questions just like from earlier on. You're talking about being excited for the heroic paths, and particularly the subpaths that you designed for Mistborn. I know I really like Haze Killer just from seeing it at Nexus. I think it's so cool, and like I want to see it in other worlds because yeah, I want to mess up people's investiture. That's great. Do you think there's ever like a seventh heroic path, like a whole new one that you guys add to Cosmere setting?
I will, never say never. That
Yeah.
is not currently in the plans, but I guess, never say never.
Yeah.
Right now, with our 6 heroic paths, we do feel that they represent the types of heroic characters you play in the Cosmere. We feel they represent that pretty well. The key talents are pretty flexible and can be adapted a lot of different ways for various specialties. So yeah, the plan is currently not to introduce new paths, just introduce new specialties, but who knows?
Uh, with designing a heroic path specialty, do you test your own path or like do you have someone else test that?
It's kind of all over. We do some of both.
Yeah.
Um, in in core design, our early playtests are a little bit Wild West. And I won't say what we're working on now, but we just, got through a round of these that was really fun. But essentially, we talk about the types of characters we want to build. We do some brainstorming for the way various powers or heroics might work. And then we have folks just build characters of a certain level. It's like, okay, go build a level 5 character with this heroic specialty that we're going to design or whatever it is, right? With this invested path that we're going to design. And just build your character sheet and write down some talent ideas. And we call them kind of vibes play tests. You just play by the seat of your pants. And if a talent you wrote doesn't work how it should in the moment. If you can figure out how to rework it so it works how you should, then you just tell the GM like, hey, can I actually do this? And they're like, yeah, sure. So we do some
That's
early play
Ooh,
testing.
that
It's so
sounds.
fun.
I was gonna
I
say that
like
sounds like a
that.
blast, and that's a great way to do that.
We're doing our
Um,
own homebrew out here, but like that's actually how like a lot of those talents make it in though. That's the funny
yeah.
thing, it's really fun. It's such a good idea of like Fisher started this, Andrew Fisher, our original system designer. He started these play tests for Mistborn, and it was really fun because he's like, focus on the way things need to feel. Like, don't focus on the fiddly parts of the syntax of the talent or whatever. That's not where we're at right now. Just focus on capturing the feeling of being an Allomancer, capture the feeling of like steel pushing, capture the feeling of being a mastermind, a leader, or whatever it is. And then once we get that distilled, once we all agree on that, we figure out like what kinds of things you should be able to do in gameplay, then we build out the talent trees. Then we focus on like solidifying things, balancing it, making sure the wording is right.
Do you have a fun vibe-based talent anecdote for really any of the Mistborn paths you worked on, the ones that have been revealed? So I think that's the
Yeah.
warrior ones, the hunter ones, and then we did see most of Grifter. Yeah, do you have any fun like, oh, this was a vibes-based talent decision from playtesting? I particularly care
Yeah.
about Haze Killer, but if it's another one, it's okay.
So there was a talent that started off in Grifter, and I moved to Haze Killer, and then ultimately got booted off. But
Oh no!
the talent was called Down the Hatch, and as a reaction, I can't remember the exact wording, but like when one of your allies within your reach runs out of investiture, you're able to help them down a vial or like refill their investiture if you have a method of doing that. And it was very much meant to be like the sidekick kind of thing. So I looked for building out agent, Rebel, the new agent specialty. I looked a lot to Kelsier for inspiration. For Grifter, like looked a lot to Wayne. And Down the Hatch felt like a Wayne talent. And ultimately we're like, okay, but this kind of deals with investiture. Maybe it feels more Haze Killer, but Haze Killers typically like focus on opposing Allomancers. So does this really fit thematically? So we ended up booting that off, and there's a version of that talent now in the fun Valentine's Day splat, the Bromantic, that was just released a couple months ago. So that talent did get to see the light of day in some form.
Yeah.
But it had lived previously in Grifter and then in Haze Killer for a little bit. And I love that talent. I completely agree with our decision to, vote it off the island. But I think that it was just kind of fun and thematic.
Now, speaking of things voted off the island, I know from Cosmere Conversations interview with you, I think last year at this point, there's the idea you had for a Spren GM, which I think was the answer to my question I submitted for them of like, what was your favorite thing on the cutting room floor?
Oh yeah.
So if you want to like, some people might not have heard that. If you want to talk about Spren GM a little bit and sort of the idea behind it, I'd be very interested.
Yeah, so with Spren are such a big part of Stormlight. And if you have a table with 5 Radiant characters, you're introducing 5 NPs along with them, 5 Spren. And so it just feels like there's kind of a heavy cognitive load there for the GM to make sure that you are continually encouraging your characters to interact with their Spren. The idea for Spren GM was basically a role at the table where if somebody brings a friend or a partner or somebody who just wants to come hang out for vibes and snacks, that person could have a sheet with the names of all the Spren at the table and who they're bonded with and their personalities. And they could kind of take moments to pipe up and just kind of interact. And we have Spren rules that are pretty light, pretty easy to use. So they could just use those rules. And then for any heroic characters at the table, the Spren GM could play their patrons and maybe send them on missions or different things like that. So it was an idea to help alleviate cognitive load from the GM and also introduce, somebody whose focus was really building out Spren as people with personalities. They also have character growth arcs, which I think we've all seen in the books. It's just a lot of effort at the table for a GM or the player to be super focused on this. And so, ultimately, I think it makes sense to cut Spren GM. It was, only ever going to be an optional thing, but as you can tell by the size of the Stormlight handbook, we were like running out of pages there. But you can still do this with your groups if you want to. Where we ended with Spren being role played, by the GM, by players, and kind of having that be a shared thing, I think makes a lot of sense and was an easy way to eliminate like the need for another role at the table. So yeah, very much agree with why it was cut, but that was the background behind this fun little idea. And I think anyone could still easily use it.
Yeah, if my players knew more about the storm, like just the world of Roshar, I might like assign one of them to be each other's Spren.
That's cool.
But no, now I have to decide how people's Spren work.
Yeah. Having a conversation with yourself at the table isn't that interesting. And I think like it's easy to feel self-conscious as a player if you're like having this tense fight with your spren or sharing this sentimental deep moment. I think it's very awkward at the table to kind of play both sides of this conversation you're having with yourself, and then everyone's just kind of watching. And so I definitely think, having a GM step in and kind of handle those types of conversations that are very important and formative is good. But for general friend silliness and whatnot, I think that that's easily handled by a player.
Yeah. Have you ever had your players kind of force you as a DM to have two of your NPCs talk to each other?
Ooh. I try to avoid it. I
Yeah.
try to drag them right back into it.
It's tough.
Ooh,
I've had it happen once or twice.
yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
hilarious that you brought that up. I literally watched a video this morning where Brendan Lee Mulligan was giving advice, and he was like, "Yeah, my players tried to do that, and I just turned it into a third person conversation where I just explained what their conversation sounded like, and then was like stuck my tongue out at them and made them take back over."
I should
It was
have done
pretty funny.
that. They
Yeah.
they were like, yeah, well, we have this dwarf that's our liaison. He's going to talk to the guard captain with us there, and I'm like, oh, great, all
It was
right.
really funny because he said something like, he was like, clairvoyance is like the bane of my. So I just thought it was a really funny anecdote. So that's ironic that you brought it up.
That's funny.
Yeah. It just made me think of that. It's a fun thing to do.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I struggle. That's something I struggle with. I'm lucky that my players are playing with like I have two cryptics and two light sprint. So light sprint don't really speak. They like just give you a lot of, or they don't speak often. So it's mostly vibes. So yeah. So like, do you have any fun characters that you've got to play in playtest that you can talk about that really like stand out for you as just fun characters you've got to play?
Yeah, so with Stormlight, I have Literal, my soulcaster like mortician, ardent character, and she was a lot of fun to play. I did a whole cosplay for her for the charity live play at Dragonsteel in 2023, which was really fun. I kind of surprised my coworkers dressing up head to toe in a costume that I had made based on character art that Johnny had given me. And so that was really fun to kind of dress up as this character and like really get to build out her backstory. And yeah, she's an interesting one for sure. And then with Mistborn, I have two that I really like. One was a sharpshooter, and then she was a soother connector. And so she would carry a rifle on her back, soothe the people around her, and disconnect, like store connection. And it allowed her to kind of move through society a bit as a phantom. Obviously, things could happen where carrying a rifle on your back, like people are going to, end up noticing at some point. But there was a fun internal play test with our team where she may have dressed up as a caterer at a noble ball and hidden a mounted rotary gun underneath a giant cloche and like rolled this cart into a party. And so there were silly things happening like that were a lot of fun. And then I had my character from the 2025 Nexus live play where we previewed some Mistborn content. Lusa Beckeret. She was a agent, and she also was a chromium fairing, and that was fun because I got to build out the talents for chromium, and so it was kind of fun to to get to play those out.
That's awesome. And I mean, your mortician character was so popular, she got turned into one of the minis for the campaign. So that's awesome. Now I've been starting to like go through the books and try to figure out which art pieces were playtest characters and which ones were just the artist designing.
I think that whole like party that we see is from an early internal playtest, right?
So what happens with the art for these books is we have an art director. For Stormlight, it was Katie Payne, and we have Johnny O'Neill, our fearless leader. And Johnny is really into art, and so we have a strong art team. And then there's some artists from Dragonsteel that we work with and consult with, and then also we work with a lot of fan artists, which is really cool. But Johnny is awesome. And he built out a cast of characters, of original characters to draw into the art. So it makes it feel like you are seeing scenes from the Stormlight archive, but they're with these characters that are really unique and seem like they have a whole story behind them, but you haven't seen them from the books. And so they're just meant as an example of characters that you could create and play, basically just showing you how you can make the Cosmere your own, you know? And so he had already had an idea of what these characters might look like, what paths they might represent. So that's, I think, very much Johnny and our art team. And Johnny will sometimes hand us these characters for playtests and say, hey, here's some art. Would you make a character based on this? Or here's a bunch of pieces of art. Now you can all like fight over which ones you want, which is funny. So yeah, there's just moments like that. And then we'll just kind of get a character concept and we'll build them. So for Stormlight, we had a cast of characters. Originally, we built them out for that charity live play at Nexus in 2023, but we also used them in the examples of play in the book. And so like I wrote the Endeavor example with our characters, and it was fun because we can build in these jokes that we had from playing in person together. And we did that for Stormlight, and then with Mistborn, our live play experiences didn't happen until a little bit later, but it was really fun to play our characters, and we all came cosplaying for that one, for the Mistborn
that one
we
was
all came,
great.
like cosplay for that, and even Merrick, who's GMing, like he and his partner had made this fantastic costume that was modeled exactly after the inventor character in the Mistborn handbook. So keep an eye out for that when the book is out. But yeah, our artists who do the character design, Steve and Deandra, they do such a fantastic job. And it's just really cool because all of their costumes or I shouldn't say costumes because they're characters, but their armor and outfits are very unique. And they just feel like, the character design is just really, really strong. Like you can tell that they're meant to be player characters, not just NPCs.
Yeah. The art direction of the books so far has been phenomenal. So I'm very excited to see Mistborn and get to see all the art. We've got little peeks from Jillian so far. Did you get to play any of the PC characters for the Mistborn art?
Yes. So Lisa Beckeret, who is the agent character.
Okay.
And yeah, so Johnny is, he's cool. He like kind of builds in these ideas for what invested paths they might have, if any. So he had the idea that she might have chromium, and so that was really fun to kind of just build out. And then yeah, all of the characters in that playtest were from different pieces of art, either heroic character art or invested character art.
Awesome. Do you have? Well, we already asked what your favorite thing coming up for Mistborn is, right? Have we asked that?
I think we did.
We've talked about some general Mistborn things. I think maybe.
Yeah.
So I do have a random question that if you can't answer, I can just cut this. Like, how excited are you guys to see people cross playing between, like, I know we're only going to be at 2 settings at this point, but like, so like somebody playing an Assassin's Creed character, but in a Mistborn setting, or a Rebel character in the Stormlight setting, like seeing those heroic paths cross pollinate. Like, is that something from a design perspective that you guys get excited to see, or like you guys are so much on to the next that it's like, we'll hear about it when it happens?
We are so excited.
Okay.
I think, we're all just, everybody who's worked on this game, like, we just work from home behind our computers. We're all, just nerds. We're Cosmere fans. So when we're building this out, we're thinking a lot about how, each campaign setting has to function within the game system overall. We are kind of problem solving a lot of things. We're building a lot of new things. We're testing a lot of things, making sure they're working. And we're really just focused on the work while we're doing it. And it's a really weird but cool disconnect to then see the game go out into the world. And it's just such a neat experience. So I would say we're all super excited to see what kind of characters people build. And absolutely, those heroic specialties, most of them will be playable across different campaign settings. There are a few, such as Gunslinger and like Inventor, where they're not going to be as good fits for Roshar. But most of them are playable. Even Sharpshooter, technically, you could play on Roshar with a character who has a bow. So yeah, very excited to see some cross-pollination there. And it really just kind of, I think you can almost treat it like new content for Mistborn, but also like an expansion kind of add-on for Stormlight, vice versa. So the three specialties that we present for any campaign setting are really good jumping off points, but certainly, like you said, there are plenty that would work in different settings as well.
Yeah, I'm already like trying to figure out the stuff that I can with what you got. So
Yeah, Surgeon will have to get reprinted in every campaign setting that we do, or we'll have to include it in some way because it just needs to, for some mundane healing. But yeah, really fun that for Mistborn we have at least one specialty for each heroic pass. So lots of fun new things to try out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like you have such a good baseline of heroic specialties just between what we've seen for Mistborn and what's on Roshar. Like, I'm trying to think, like, what's the heroic specialties from Nulthus or from South? Like, that's a curiosity thing. Obviously, you're working on them. You can't say, but that sounds like an interesting task.
Yeah, there are so many cool ones to come. That's all I can say at this point. But like, we're actively, we're working in the background, and there are some really neat ones. I keep expecting us to run out of ideas, but we work with an awesome, diverse team of designers, and they bring their A game. So there's tons of cool things to come.
Yeah. As long as we can do like Emperor's Soul, but just before that book takes place and do like a Thomas Crown affair, big art thief endeavor, I'm into it.
Awesome. So what I guess like one of the last questions as we're like kind of winding down. So like what would you say is like the stamp that you've left on the game from a design perspective so far?
I would say it's helping translate Brandon's books into into gameplay format, helping to build scaffolding in the background that helps GMs and players orchestrate, these epic stories at their table. A lot of that I try to build in subtly, so it doesn't require a ton of time or outside prep work from GMs or players, but just in the ways that we talk about, how your character's culture relates to them, or in thinking about your character's obstacle and their kind of dark night of the soul, and sometimes how that's going to feel like you're leading your character down a path that is not ultimately, where they want to end up, but allows for these cool redemption arcs, or allows for moments of like profound growth and swearing ideals and things like that. I try very hard to build in the correct elements of good storytelling into the game, so they don't feel like a heavy lift, but they're already in there. They're kind of baked into the fabric of all of the different mechanics and how they work. So that's I think my biggest thing that I bring to the table is being somebody who has a lot of experience with story, and who understands Brandon's vision for story. And then, again, just bringing that to games, which I think we all really love. We all love RPGs, and we love games that make us feel and that create like these profound shared experiences between friends, where in 10 years we're going to look back and be like, oh yeah, remember that time where we played these characters or went and did this. And yeah, that's what we're doing out here. That's why we are doing the work that we do. I assume that's why people play the Cosmere RPG, is just to then make the Cosmere your own, to get to live it yourself and get to recreate these things in a shared way that means a lot to you. Obviously, we are not all Brandon Sanderson. We are not all, award-winning authors, but when you get to the table, you bring your sincerity and you bring your humor and you bring your heart and your cool ideas, and your cleverness, and you get to create these incredible stories together that mean a lot to you and your friends. And so I think that's really what matters. It's not focusing on the minutia of everything. It's like building in the right foundation so that then people can just go and create their own things.
Well, you guys have done an absolutely fantastic job of accomplishing that task. This game is so exciting. Like, obviously, that's why we spend, one day a week for sure talking about it on mic, and the rest of the week just messaging each other on Discord talking about it. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us.
Y'all are so great.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate you guys for supporting us as much. So yeah, I guess in closing, like, is there anything you want to plug? Any shout outs you want to give? Any of that good stuff before we kind of sign off for the day?
Yeah, just look forward to Mistborn. Please play it once you get it. And yeah, let us know what kinds of characters you build, on Reddit or wherever else. We do lurk on the Cosmere RPG Reddit. We're always curious to see how y'all are interacting with the game. And yeah, just really, really interested to see what kind of stories everybody tells.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again for joining us. We will absolutely ask you to come back at some point, I am sure. Whether it is to talk about Moash's redemption arc or the Mistborn RPG, one or the other, we will see. Yeah, but so don't forget, for all you listeners and all you viewers out there, make sure to comment, like, subscribe on audio where you get your audio, subscribe on YouTube. There's a little bell icon. It'll let you know when we have new episodes coming out. But until next time, let's roll our plot die and raise the stakes. This has been Complicated Opportunities.
Woo!